word flooding can be a scary word, whether you are looking to buy in Ocean City or you already own here. In today's video, I'm going to talk you through two things. One being a potential change that is slated to take effect this August 2025 that could have a big impact for both new construction and older homes alike. And the second thing is to briefly talk about the monetary impact flooding can have on home values all across the island. The first thing I want to talk about is the legislation change. So about a year ago in 2024, it was finalized that effective August 2025, there's going to be a change in the required elevation of homes in coastal towns. That is going to have an impact here in a couple ways. So the first thing is the actual how high. The short version is they're trying to change the base requirement elevation to BFE +5, base flood elevation level +5. Now, Ocean City generally across the board is roughly a BFE +3. So the town is trying to really dig into the 1,000 pages of legislation to determine if this is going to have a 2 or 3 foot increase on our base flood elevation. Now, this is only really effective towards new construction homes. The other caveat that always seems to get swept under the rug or looked past in these legislative acts is what it means for older homes. So right now we have a 50% rule that is FEMA based. So if you're going to improve your home by more than 50% of its market value, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, I was always under the impression that it was the tax assessed value of the dwelling, but apparently it is the market value of the dwelling. 50% or more, you now have to bring your home up to current standards. And that includes flood elevation standards. Some of these older homes would not withstand a lifting, let alone cost, right? If you're going to maybe do a kitchen, a bathroom, and change out the wiring from old wiring to new wiring, you're looking at least $50,000. Well, if the value is mostly in the land, as it is here in Ocean City, your dwelling may not be worth very much, and you may now have to lift your home if you want to make those changes. Now, that's going to impact even more homes based off of this potential change that is again slated to roll out in August. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is if a home, single family or otherwise, is at height 35 feet or above, it's 35 feet tall or higher, you may now be required to have a sprinkler system installed, which is additional cost, not just for the installation, but also for the maintenance, for the servicing of that system. And this was put out by the city solicitor, Dottie McCrossin. He also had said that there are certain homes, there will be more prevalence of elevators first and foremost, because you're now going to have additional several feet of stairs to get into the home itself. It's likely going to be more elevators. And if it's not a single family home, if it's a multifamily home, you may need to get a commercial elevator, which is even more of an expense. So the short version is this law that was passed is likely going to have some significant impacts here to homes on the island as far as what you can do to them, what the costs will be of maintaining these homes. And quite frankly, call me lazy, but it's already hard looking at some of these sets of stairs that are 10, 12 feet off the ground. You're telling me now they're going to have to be 2 to 3 feet higher. That's more stairs, that's more walking. It's going to change some of the designs, and probably not for the better of what it's going to have to look like. Now, there may be some lawsuits of some kind that will try to delay this. There may be pushes from our town especially and others to have incremental changes. We'll see. But for now, right, here we are 6 months away. As it stands, it looks like it will have an impact. Now, the second part of this, the flooding, with what I mentioned with the 50% rule. So I was always under the impression that it was 50% of the value of the dwelling of your home, the tax assessed value. Now, because there's such a dissociation between those tax assessed values and the actual market values, it's been reinterpreted, is my understanding, to now be the market value of the dwelling, not the land, just the house, the structure itself. And you may think, well, how can anybody determine that? Right? That usually is only determined, and you can kind of back into it, if the home is sold because the market has acted. So really, if you own a home where you're going to be doing work and you're concerned you're going to surpass that 50% rule, my recommendation, my strong recommendation would be to hire an appraiser to appraise your home before you even start the project. Because if you go ahead with the project, the city receives the invoices, the permits, everything that they need, and they determine that you've exceeded that 50%, can't really just undo the work. Now you have a battle on your hands and you have nothing to back it up. So if you have an appraisal, I would get a quote from the contractor for whoever is doing the work and go to the construction office, to the city, and say, here's what I want to do. Here's the appraisal. Here's the quote. Is this going to be a problem? I think you should be proactive in getting these things done so that you can move forward with peace of mind and clarity as to what that's going to look like. So again, important tweak for some folks, but it's not going to impact most of you. The other side of this is flooding. Now, I had a recommendation from one of you watching to take a look and really explain how flooding impacts market values and home values here on the island. So I'm going to start from square one here and assume that nobody knows anything that I've talked about in the past, that you're all seeing this for the very first time. So first of all, a lot of folks coming to the island who maybe aren't too familiar with it just assume that flooding comes from the ocean, right, versus the bay. But that is not true. The flooding comes up from the back bay, usually through the storm drains or through bulkheads that may have some cracks, some issues, or are totally missing. As we know, there is one property in particular that just doesn't have a bulkhead, so water comes streaming into the streets. So flooding starts from the bay and works its way up for the most part. If we're talking Hurricane Sandy levels, yes, you're going to have some water coming from the ocean as well. So if we think about flooding coming from there, from the west to the east, property values, do they track? Are they lower by the bay side and higher on the beach side? The answer, generally speaking, is yes. Obviously, bayfronts have tremendous value in and of themselves, but as soon as you get off the actual bayfront and you're right across the street, property values tend to be towards the lower end that you'll see on the island. The main driver of home values on the island, flooding impacts them, don't get me wrong, but it's proximity to the beach or to the water. And if you're not close to the beach, you better be on the bay. Property values tend to flow accordingly. I don't have a map that I can pull up and just show you. There's way too many variables. But flooding does have an impact on Simpson, on Haven, in certain pockets, in certain neighborhoods, Marion Park, Ocean City Homes. These are factors that most buyers consider, and many people don't want to deal with flooding of any kind. So not only are you paying a little bit more to get closer to the beach, right, a shorter walk, closer to where you want to be on those nice summer days, you're also paying to avoid risk at the same time. Gardens neighborhood's a great example of that. It's one of the highest elevation points on the island in that Gardens East neighborhood. The west is high as well. Those premiums are twofold. Again, proximity to the beach and lack of flooding for the most part. So yes, that is very consistent. Now, I did have a question generate in my own head when I was preparing for this video. This NJ-REAL Act that's going to require homes to be elevated, right? Is that going to have an impact on home values in any particular way? I think the answer is probably yes. New construction is always going to be new construction. There are going to be people who want that. There are going to be people who want the features, the elevators, all that good stuff. But if you now own in a floodier part of town and you're going to build new, or a developer is going to buy your home and they're going to build, what's the market going to be like specifically in those areas? Well, I don't think it's going to be any different than it is now. Again, most buyers factor flooding in. Unfortunately, there are probably more than there should be who are totally unaware and caught off guard. It's not brought up to them by their realtor or whoever they use to help them find and purchase their home here. But it is a deciding factor for many folks. And that shouldn't change. I don't think the dynamics are going to change. Again, a new construction or a raised home in a floody area is still going to be less desirable than a similar home in a less floody area. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. Number one, that change I'm going to monitor as we get closer to August and give you updates as they're relevant. And number two, values are impacted by flooding, but they are far more impacted by the proximity to the beach and the boardwalk. So I hope you found this helpful. It's shorter than most of the videos recently, but if you found it helpful, do me a favor and hit the like button. And if you aren't already, and many more videos coming your way about everything here going on in Ocean City, make sure you subscribe down below. Thanks for hanging out, as always, and I'll see you next time.